Hey everybody, this is Mike Hughes. Can you hear me okay? This is our agenda for today. We're first going to talk about the context and mission of the Department of Public Works in Durham. We're going to then lay out our goals and objectives for geospatial analysis with GIS. We're going to be able to show some of the results, and then we're going to talk about how we did it, and then take a look under the hood at the technical architecture and the data flows. Next. The Public Works Department in Durham provides a wide range of services, including street maintenance, engineering design, development review, and stormwater quality and infrastructure maintenance. And the mission of the department is to ensure that the street infrastructure is safe and well maintained, and that supports the quality of life and indeed serves as a foundation of a healthy economy. Next slide. Some of our specific goals and objectives are to communicate clearly to our citizens, evaluate all of our projects against our mission with respect to how effective they are they efficient, are we using the resources correctly, and the equitable provision of services across the city. And the city's a pretty big place. We're about 200 square miles. We've got 250,000 citizens and a whole lot of infrastructure. And we use GIS along with these tools to visualize the commitment in our projects against the different districts within the city. And we report the expenditure as a function of geography or neighborhood or PAC district, and we also can show the progress of work through GIS, and that's going to be one of the focuses of the presentation today. Next. A long time ago, and Paul alluded to this as he was talking about our two previous Tobacco Road installments. In 2007, we launched our Primavera deployment, and we decided to start simple, maintain our existing workflow, extend the deployment to our contractors, get them as partners, and get them using the systems. And we planned our integration with GIS, but we didn't launch it right away. We quickly learned as we got rolling that we needed to have different deployment models in Contract Manager depending upon our type of contract. And the story that we're going to tell is kind of reflect that learning curve. So in summary, consider this table. In the first column, we're showing type 1, type 2, and type 3. In the second column is a mnemonic that just tells us what the contract was in the city. So ST-227 was a street construction contract. It had 14 different projects in it, 128 items in the schedule of values. It was about a $6 million contract, and the average cost for each one of those 14 projects was about $435,000. In the Type 2 contract, which was a street repaving as opposed to construction, it had 200 different street segments that we were repaving, a much smaller schedule of values. The contract amount was still pretty big, 4.4 mil, but the average project cost for each one of the 200 street segments was about $22,000. In the Type 3 contract, it's a sidewalk repair, and I believe it's also curb ramps. There was 380, almost 400 different little project sites, 33 items in the schedule of values, much smaller contract, only $800,000. And as a result, the average cost for each one of those locations we were working was $2,000. Next slide. Thus far, this system that we're going to describe today has managed over $70 million in contracts since 2007. And this screen just is a snapshot of the P6 dashboard that shows an array of projects from resurfacing projects to pedestrian bridge to stimulus money, ARRA, to curb ramps and water and sewer line construction. Next slide. And there's an array of type 1s, type 2s, and type 3s. So the workflow that was in place before we deployed these tools is shown on the slide, and it's the same workflow that we have today. A contractor working on our construction projects creates a daily report, and that daily report, both in our systems and in his prior life, showed what the contractor did that day, how many units of each pay item that he put in the ground, where he was, and what the conditions were. And the next thing he does is to hand that daily report off to our inspector on the job, who then approves the quantities. And if the inspector approves it, it moves on down to the payment requisition. If the inspector disagrees, he sends it back to the contractor with some notes indicating what he's not in agreement with. It could be a shortage of quantities, or it could be an overpayment, or it just could be maybe a simple typo. At the end of the month, the payment requisitions are rolled into, well, the daily reports are rolled into a payment requisition that our project manager approves, and then that gets set on to our Munis accounting system for payment, and we update P6. Next. So 5 years later, after learning what we learned in the early days and being true to our workflow, and now integrating it with GIS, we really have completely automated the reporting workflow. We fully accommodated all of our contract types, and we've begun to really refine our geospatial reporting and analysis. And we've broadcast that on our website. We'll demo it to you in just a little bit. But it allows our citizens to check in on the status of the repaving project, which is what we'll show today, as well as some other contracts. And we have a series of reports that we send the City Council, and we're also leveraging GIS for planning purposes. It's actually a warehouse, a geospatial warehouse of the projects that we plan on in the future. Next. So here's where the results are available to the citizens. This is a static shot of the city website. I think Stephen's actually going to, he's managing our slides. I think he's going to dive into the web, and we're going to show this dynamically. So he's bringing the internet browser up. And down in the bottom on the front screen, Stephen's clicked ahead pretty quickly right now, but there was this little icon with a guy called the Pavinator. And that's him there. Stephen, if you could back up one screen, please.
Sure. Sorry to get ahead of you, Michael.
No worries. So this is the Department of Public Works page on the city website. And the access to our repaving program is the icon down in the bottom in the center of the screen. That's the little guy holding a shovel with a yellow safety hat. Stephen's going to click that. And that takes him to another page that has got information on it about our bonds and our plans and programs. Stephen is going to go to this link on the right-hand side that says Maps of Streets Scheduled for Repaving. And this is an interactive dynamic application that goes into our GIS system. So what you're seeing on the screen is the outline of Durham County. And the city of Durham occupies a good bit, if not most of the county, and we're the only municipality within Durham County. On the right-hand side, you'll see a list of streets, and that's scrollable and searchable. Stephen's going to go down to the below where it says Find a Street, and he's got a specific street he's going to look for. And it's Oriole Drive. So he types it in, it gives him a list of the different blocks of Oriole Drive, and he clicks on it, and it takes him right in the map to that Oriole Drive. It's shown on more or less on the left-hand side of your screen. It is highlighted in yellow, and it has a blue bar through it. So Stephen, if you could go down to the legend on the right-hand side of the screen that says static and click that. The blue background in the streets shows the streets that are proposed for the 2010 resurfacing program. The purple dashed line are streets that are under contract. The green streets are ones that have already been done, and so on. Well, on Oriole Drive, you'll see that there's this little pop-up window in the middle, and it's got a facility ID on it of 59852. And it gives the block range and some other information and tells us that the condition of this pavement from our 2007 pavement survey was poor, rated 60, and that it shows that it's in the resurfacing contract ST252, and that's one of our mnemonics, so it lets us know which contract it is. But the thing that's most important to our citizens is when it's going to be repaved, and it's shown to be repaved in August 2012. There are other streets in here that have been repaved already. Stephen, could you click on that street down below Cardinal Drive, both the one in green? Let's click on the green one first.
Let's see. This
okay.
Here. Sorry, I think I'm missing the street that you're looking at.
No, you're doing good. So the point being to the audience is that not only can you search streets, you can search your street or your neighbor's street or someone else's, but then you can also navigate around this map and click on any street and see what its status is, when it was repaved, or when it will be repaved. So this is the end result, and let's and Stephen's indeed exercising the feature to move around and click on some things. So and this particular street is interesting because it was in a contract from a few years ago, and it shows that it was indeed completed, and it was paved in 2010. So we'll go back to the PowerPoint and start to talk about how we get to this place. Well, Stephen is just going to click ahead across the static slides that we use when we don't have an internet connection.
And this is Stephen. I'll just point out for the benefit of the folks viewing this on the recording that if you had difficulty seeing the previous views because of the scale, you can see a little bit of a close-up of the same GIS-based summary information for different streets here, blown up with a little bit in a little bit larger scale. This is a different street, but you can see some of the same type of information.
Good point, Stephen. And the other thing that I think we probably ought to amplify, if we go back one slide, is that the facility ID is the unique key that links GIS to our project base in Contract Manager and our other project management tools. So that key, called Facility ID 52507, is unique, and that's the handle by which we pass data back and forth. Next slide. So this is an example of some of the expenditure by geography that we report. This is showing two types of projects. In the left-hand side, you have ARRA, which was actually stimulus money, and with that, we built some new sidewalk, and we resurfaced some trails, and we reconstructed an intersection. So what we're showing is the breakout by PAC district, and PAC is a mnemonic that stands for Partners Against Crime. You'll see the boundaries of that in a second as we advance, but those districts are used to show that how well our spending patterns transcend the different neighborhood and the different interests within the city. On the right-hand side, it's showing our resurfacing projects, and again, that's a breakout by PAC district, and at the bottom, we're looking at the combined totals. It shows us where we're spending our money. Next slide. So this shows a slide from inside GIS of the streets that are to be repaved. Again, a little hard to see. The takeaway is that the legend on the left shows them color-coded by contract. And within the field itself, you'll see that there's streets that are colored in green, and there's in the upper right corner and in the lower left corner, there are streets that are colored in purple, and that's just to distinguish that they're in two different contracts. Next slide. When you turn on the PAC districts, you'll see how they overlay on top of the city network, and GIS has the tools that you can interrogate within a PAC district as to how much repaving we are doing, how much has been done, how many square feet is scheduled for repaving. Next slide. So our process design goals as we took our baby steps and eased into the place where we are today is that our needs were across those three types of contracts, type 1, type 2, and type 3. We need to know the pay item quantity and cost by location, and we need to roll those up and aggregate them so we're aware holistically of our budget in each of the contracts. So we need to be aware of our budget not only in the sum of the parts, but at each one of the individual locations as well. Some of the constraints were, you remember that I said we wanted to open this up to our contractors and make them partners in our technology. Well, there's some resistance to technology. Their mission is to put pavement on the ground or pipe in the ground, and they're not so much computer people. So we needed a user interface system that was productive for them, and one of the challenges was getting them to go back and forth between Contract Manager and P6 with detailed data. So the solution, and the name that we coined, is the PDRX, which is the Primavera Daily Report Extender. It serves as a subsidiary ledger to Contract Manager, and in our recent deployment, it has become a single portal, and this is really important. It's a single portal for data entry to both Contract Manager, P6, and GIS. So that's pretty cool. Next. So how we did it. This is a conceptual systems view. On the left side of the screen, we show our planning process just as this big square thing. Well, there's a lot of work that goes into that, but the result is that we produce a contract, the green bar, and then we go execute the contract. So at the top of the execution phase, we have detailed progress reporting, quantities and status by location, and then we aggregate the cost, and that goes down through the left side of that center area to the cost document and workflow controls, and it ends up in a payment that gets handed off to the accounting system. On the right side of that process, the dates that are entered get handed off to the schedule and our resource controls. We then get a status by location, and that goes to GIS to update the city infrastructure. And on the far right, we've got this management tool, and we have a set of dashboards, project reports, and automatic email notifications when certain events happen. And we'll show you where those are within the UI system. Next. So this is the software systems view. The plan, we use AutoCAD, GIS, and other tools to develop our estimate and bid documents. But in the middle, in the execution stage, the Primavera Daily Report Extender is really at the top of the heap. And it collects data, and it passes it off on the left side to Contract Manager, and then on down to our accounting system, Munis by Tyler Technologies. And then on the right-hand side, PDRX hands off the dates to P6, updates P6 automatically, and then we have another automated process that updates GIS. And on the far right is iconic of some of the dashboard reports. and our newest deployments leverage the 2008 SQL Server reporting services for those tools. Next. And this is just a repeat of, in words, of the previous screen graphically. And Stephen is now going to give you a look under the hood and talk more about the nuts and bolts, and he's going to demo PDRX and some of the tools.
Terrific. Thank you, Michael. Again, this is Stephen Cole, and I'm with Concrete Data. We're based also in Durham, North Carolina, and we've partnered with both the City of Durham and with CDP to help them build and integrate the software systems that Michael has just described and that we'll now proceed to show you. So I want to pull out a couple things from what Michael has already said, which is that one of the goals of PDRX was to capture very fine-grained progress data in a way that was efficient and allowed everybody in the reporting process to know where a project stands on budget. That's very important for both the contractor that's working on behalf of the city and for the city's inspectors and project managers to know. And if you think back to the Type 1, 2, and 3 contracts, especially in the case of Type 3 contracts, we're capturing very fine-grained data about a project that might have a total cost of a few $1,000s. So again, the need here is for a software system that captures data without imposing such an overhead that that the cost is just not justified compared to the scale of the work. So those were among our goals when we set out to manage geospatial information, and our solution for doing so rests in part on PDRX and in part on the Primavera toolset that PDRX feeds. So what I'm going to do here is go ahead and log in to PDRX as a contractor and show you a view of what a contractor might see. Now this is a test database. So if I start to enter things that don't make sense, please nobody get too alarmed. We're recording quantities in a test area. But I do want to give you a flavor of the complexity of information and how we have tried to make it easier to manage. So I've logged in as a contractor, and I have a couple of things I can see here. One is that I'm responsible for two separate contracts for the city, in this case ST234, ST252, and there are some reports that are in progress and some reports that are approved. There's going to be a much greater number of reports that are approved in this case because this particular contract has been underway since early in 2011. And if I want to filter down the list of daily reports to something manageable, I simply start typing in the search box, and we filter down. I typed ALPI over here, and out of 771 different reports, I now see that, okay, here's a couple of reports on Alpine Road, and here are a couple of reports on Dixon Road in the segment that runs from Eubanks to Alpine Road. So I've got rapid navigation across the set of historical information. Let's say that I'm going to report progress against a street that I have been resurfacing. So I'll pick yesterday and start again to type in either the name or, if I know it, the GIS facility ID of the facility where work was done. So as I type, again, the list of possibilities I have trims down very rapidly, and that's, again, a productivity feature. So let's say that Surrey Green Lane is the road on which I'm recording progress. I'm going to click the Create Report button. And what I'm doing is, in effect, saying I'm going to report progress for yesterday, June 27th, there it is, for this particular facility. Now this is a busy screen, and so I'll try and call out some of the highlights of what's going on here. The first thing I'll call your attention to is we've got what we call accordion bars that allow me to show and hide the different pay items that make up this contract. For each of these pay items, there's an item number and a description, a unit of measure, and a unit cost, which comes from the bid price that I submitted to the city, and that was the basis for me, the contractor, winning that bid. This view has a couple of tabs. Yeah, go ahead, Michael.
I might just point out to the audience that those accordion bars align exactly with the cost worksheet in Contract Manager.
And thanks very much for pointing that out. There's a good reason for that as well, which is that this information will ultimately be aggregated and transferred automatically into Primavera Contract Manager. So we can see here are all the pay items that fall into the street costs cost worksheet item in Contract Manager. I can view the scheduled and billed quantities at the contract level or here at the facility level. And it looks like I haven't reported any quantities at all of these particular items against the facility to date. So, you know, in just a moment we will proceed to do so. The other thing that I can do, which is pretty interesting, is to switch to a dollar view. And again, I can look at that at the contract level or the facility level. And I can see that this particular facility was scheduled for $4,100 in cost, and that the job-to-date cost, what I have submitted already, is a little bit under $3,000. So this falls into that category we were describing of projects that are small, and the corollary there is that we need to have the ability to record progress rapidly because the job is relatively small in scope. So I'm going to go ahead and say, you know, I'm going to record that we had to do some tree trimming for 2 different trees on this particular street, and the engineer's estimate was such that no tree trimming was expected. So as soon as I type in a quantity, I see that I am 2 units over what my revised scheduled quantity was. That doesn't mean I can't submit this report. It does mean, however, that I should probably expect that the inspector is going to ask questions about, you know, why was it that I needed to do work when that wasn't in the plan. We'll come down here to repaving costs, and I'll show some areas that are more consequential and more relevant to a repaving contract. As you can see here, I can record quantities for milling asphalt, and because I've been recording test quantities in this database before, you can see that there were previous quantities against those pay items. And as soon as I type, I see that that a new value is calculated. I want to call out the fact that there's no data entry here for example, asphalt surface course and binder. And the reason for that is that the nature of the city's contracts is such that these are, in effect, assemblies. The way asphalt is paid for is based on a mix of asphalt itself and the amount of binder, which is paid in a complex way that I, the software guy, had to learn a little bit about as we were putting this system together. From the contractor's point of view, the contractor in the past has been responsible for knowing, okay, certain types of asphalt are composed of different proportions of materials, and it was incumbent upon somebody to break out how much binder was in each load of asphalt so that that load could be properly billed. What we have done is provided a general capability to record assemblies that are measured one way and paid another. And we've put that to use in this specific case by allowing the contractor to record simply truckloads of asphalt products. So, and while you're typing,
yeah, Stephen, I would just say to the audience that this exactly mimics the old workflow. It's the manual process that the contractor always gets paid for asphalt by the truck ticket. So what we're entering here is just a load of asphalt that's delivered on a truck.
Terrific, thanks. So as the contractor, I'm going to record, okay, here's ticket 123. There may be an order number and a location that are relevant to this order. I'm going to make up some values, but the location may be, for instance, the stationing on that particular street. And I select from a list of asphalt products that are relevant to this project. And each has been set up with a certain proportion of materials. So let's say I'm recording the delivery of a truckload of 18 tons of asphalt. What we do over here on the Installed Materials tab is we have broken down the quantities of virgin versus recycled asphalt binder that are implied by the particular asphalt product that I selected. And so we've now recorded, okay, there were the 18 tons of asphalt surface course, but the payment is also going to be based on 0.99 of a ton of asphalt binder. That, in turn, breaks down into 0.85 of a ton of virgin and 0.14 of a ton of recycled asphalt binder. And for those of you who are involved with repaving projects, I'm sure you know the implications of variable binder pricing probably far better than I do. But what we've done is basically relieved both the contractor and the inspector of the necessity of performing laborious calculations. So the contractor, I didn't show it, but also has the ability to attach a scan or a PDF of the ticket that evidences that delivery. And the inspector may or may not require that in order to accept this field report. So let's see, a couple of other things to point out about this field report. One is activity dates. And this reflects the integration with Primavera P6. So what we do when the contractor brings up this page is we actually reach out to a Primavera P6 schedule and identify all those activities that are relevant to this particular facility. And there are 4 of them in this case. These are the activities. And the City of Durham has adopted some conventions about activities for repaving projects, which I wouldn't get into the details, but they reflect milling, adjusting, and paving work as part of the completion of work on this street. So if I can say for sure that some of these activities are completed and I mark them complete, then the approval of this particular report will send the actual completion over to P6 and will update the actual finish date of this activity at the same time as we update the costs associated with the activity that result from the pay items that we saw over here. Another view of the P6 information is this one, where instead of breaking down the costs simply by the cost worksheet relationship to Primavera Contract Manager, here we're showing the relationship of costs to the activity in P6, and they don't have to be the same. It's in fact common for the city's deployment for them not to be the same. And so if you come over here to this tab, you can see, well, all of those costs attributable to utility adjustments, or this particular 59417-A activity, amount to $380 in actual cost, and all of those activities attributable to paving, well, here's the figure for the costs that are in P6 already. Here is the figure attributable to the work on this field report. And these dollar figures are simply those figures that were computed automatically by the entries that I just made for the last couple of moments. The last thing I'll point out, there's a history tab here, which allows me to see what is the set of events that this particular report has gone through in its life, and that'll become more relevant in a moment. So I'm going to go ahead and submit this field report. I got a little message saying, okay, the report is submitted. If I come over to reports in progress, I should see, there it is, another report for 6/27 was the date that we selected. And now as the contractor, I'm going to go ahead and log out, and I'm going to borrow your ID, Michael. Do you mind?
Not at all. I think that's a good thing to do.
Terrific. Thanks. Remember, I did say it was a test database. So I'm going to log in as Michael, and the reason I did that is because he's a much more privileged user. He's got a relationship of project manager over many contracts, not just the two that that particular contractor had. But when I open up ST252, I see, okay, here are the two reports for Surrey Green Lane that we were just looking at. And I'm going to open up the one that we just saw. And in this case, Michael has the privileges to review this field report, as do some of the other inspectors that work in the Public Works Department, who may have responsibilities that are limited to one or a smaller number of contracts. So the view is similar. There's some iconography over here, a pencil indicating that there are some non-zero values in this category, in this particular cost worksheet item. And if we open up this bar, we can see, indeed, there are the 2 units of tree trimming that we submitted. And if I look at this at the facility level, I see the same set of numbers that I was seeing previously. If I look at the contract, I can see the aggregate of quantities over the several hundred different streets that are incorporated into this particular contract. And similarly, if I come down here to repaving costs, I can see, again, the same values that we just entered. Now, suppose the inspector observes something about this report that's not accurate, and he may conclude, okay, this report needs some revision, and puts in a comment. So, you know, I just made up a comment that I hope is germane, but we're going to say, send this report back to the contractor. And I'm going to log out and log back in as the contractor so that the contractor can see this and take appropriate action. So the contractor now sees this report is flagged. It needs revision. And when I open it up, I will see, again, here are the inspector's comments, and I can take appropriate action. Now, it's possible that the inspector made a mistake, and the contractor can simply supply a comment and resubmit the report as it stands otherwise. Or it may be that I need to revise any of or all of the values. Let's just say that the contractor realizes, okay, that's true. There really did not need to be tree trimming in the work that we did. And let's just say there was, you know, on this second revision of the field report, we may notice that, okay, there was actually some other work that was done, manhole adjustments, and submit that. So I've now submitted the next revision of the same field report. So at the risk of boring our audience by going back and forth too much, I'm going to come in one more time as Michael and see that resubmitted report, which I've now opened back up again. And here what I see is there's now a blue flag that indicates that one or more of these values has changed in the current revision. So what we're doing is building up an audit trail of the values as they have been submitted line item by line item. So despite the fact that we make it really pretty simple to record progress item by item, we're providing a good amount of control so that all parties can know, okay, what's the history of each particular item on this contract. And I did that a little quickly. I'll come back and do this again. In this item, tree trimming, I saw, again, the blue flag with a flyover indicating that that value changed in the current revision of the field report. And when I click on this little magnifying glass, I can see, okay, in revision 1, the quantity was 2. In revision 2, the quantity was 0. Similarly, there's a flag down here for utility adjustments indicating that there was a value that changed there as well, so that the inspector doesn't inadvertently miss the fact that that value changed as well. The red flags indicate that at least one item at either the contract or the facility level has gone over budget. And again, that's a way of drawing everyone's attention to those items where the budget expectations are not being met.
Stephen?
Yes, sir.
While you're on this screen, you might also show the Managed Subscriptions drop-down and just point out that's where we set up the triggers for the events.
Terrific, thanks. So over here on Managed Subscriptions, if I take a look at that same contract, ST252, there's a list of events that may take place. A field report was submitted, the first field report for a facility was submitted, field report was approved, etc. And for each such event, there's a list of recipients who may or who will receive email notification that has occurred. So this is a way that both users and non-users of the PDRX application can be kept up to date. All right, so that's as much as we'll show of PDRX at the moment. We'll be happy to take any questions that may come up. I'm going to return now to the slides and talk a little bit about the technology underpinnings. The conceptual and the physical software systems that Michael showed expose many different technology APIs that we made use of to build these connections. And I'll just show them briefly. We access the Primavera tools using the Contract Manager XML API and the P6 Web Services API. And then PDRX has its own API, which is accessed by some external applications that are used to prepare estimates. And then Munis and ArcGIS we access through some different technologies, database access in the case of ArcGIS, and in addition to the ArcGIS API. So, okay, well, I suppose we did the demo a little bit in advance of the slide. Let me just talk a little bit about how the integration with Contract Manager and P6 works. So what we saw was the recording of very fine-grained, very location-specific data. And behind the scenes, the information from many facilities is gathered up together for a certain date and brought into Primavera Contract Manager as a single daily report for that date, covering the aggregate of facilities. So the quantities for the Contract Manager daily report represent the sum of multiple facilities. And that's done consciously to ensure that we have a manageable volume of data in Contract Manager. As I mentioned, the information that is shown on the Activity Dates tab represents completion of activities, and that is propagated to Primavera P6 and actually updates the schedule automatically. So this is a way for the contractor's entry of progress to update the project plan without the contractor needing to go into P6 directly. And then similarly, through a background process, the P6 status of each facility is transferred over to the GIS database so that these, the information about repaving progress and both scheduled and actual is recorded in the GIS systems that are available to citizens. And Michael, do you want to talk about features?
Sure. Thanks very much, Stephen. So with the data that we've got in GIS now, we can use the tool GIS as a predictive model for repaving costs in the future. And we can begin to look at some of the GIS attributes and project histories to do our forecast. For example, one of the corollaries that is becoming evident is that our repaving costs can be somewhat predicted by the type of construction, that the kind of structure or construction that you have underneath the pavement, the year it was built, and even the underlying soil condition. So we can start to use GIS as a tool to look at bigger picture trends in that, is it more expensive, or do we have to repave our streets more frequently when they have this particular soil type, or when they were built in the 60s versus the 80s? Or we can also look at traffic loads and the effect it's got on street degradation. The other thing that is becoming evident is, with the collection of historical data, we're now getting feedback loops for our estimating process. In the PDRX demo, you saw that some items were over budget, and we're paying attention to those and refining our estimating process to make ourselves better estimators, and we get a better handle on the contracts. We're looking to optimize dissimilar work geographically, and we've done that extremely well. For example, I'm in the Department of Public Works, and we repave streets. We have a sister department called Water Management that repairs the underground pipes in the streets. Stephen, you had something pop up on the screen there. So what we have done is we have an integrated process where Water Management is actually checking off on the streets that we're going to be repaved, saying that they don't need to do any underground work, or that they're scheduling their underground work ahead of our repaving, since they know our repaving schedules. And Stephen's going to show some really pretty exciting Google Maps visualization of our data. What you saw earlier was our GIS view that through the city website. This Google Maps is not something that we've released yet, but Stephen, go ahead.
Great, thanks. So this is, as Michael mentioned, this is a prototype application that uses the Google Maps API to show project summary information on a map. And so what it does is basically puts a bunch of colored pushpins on a map, one for each facility that's incorporated in a particular contract. So I selected ST252, one of the city's current repaving contracts, and we can see the list of streets that's affected by that contract. We've got similar behavior here. If I know a particular facility that I'm looking for, I can simply start to type, and as I do so, the list of facilities is pruned down to just those that match either the text or the GIS facility ID that I'm interested in. And in this case, we'll go back to that Oriole Drive that we were talking about earlier. And I click on that, and what's happening here is that the Google Maps application is actually going out in real time to Primavera P6, and it's pulling a list of the activities pertinent to that facility with their planned and actual start and finish dates. So this is perhaps more detailed than might be of interest to a citizen who may not be, cognizant of what the different activities mean, but it might be a pretty interesting view for a planner within the city. Similarly, we can see, okay, here's the costs to date. This particular facility hasn't started yet, so we don't see costs. But if I come over here and look at maybe one of these facilities where work is completed, this is one where the repaving took place last year in July. I can see, all right, here are the costs, again broken down by the activity and the pay item. And this is a real-time view back into Primavera P6. So we're pretty excited about the possibilities here. It behaves as Google Maps applications do, so you can get really good zoom ability. But we've merged that with the project summary information from P6. Okay, and these slides are simply static screenshots of the same. Michael, you want to talk about this particular tool?
Sure. One of the other things that we're doing with our bid data is we're looking at the bid price distribution by pay item, by contract, and we're doing this in preparation of releasing our contracts pre-bid, so we can get an idea of the prices that we should expect, and then we're also using it as a tool to evaluate the bids once they come in. Next slide. So some of our lessons learned, we have multiple constituencies that have divergent needs. Our contractors are really focused on their work. They need a very efficient UI. Our inspectors need to understand what the work in progress is, where the budget is, and what their tasks are with respect to reviewing the daily reports. Our project managers need to manage the overall cost and schedule, and our citizens, all they want to know is just when you're going to be done, when you're going to show up and pave my street, and how long it's going to take. And these integrated systems let us serve each constituency well. Next. For that, we'll just open it up to questions. Turns out it's right at 3 o'clock.
Yeah, so I don't have any questions right now. So if anybody has questions, you can go ahead and type them in, and we'd be glad to answer your questions.
And while we're waiting on any questions that may come up, we want to thank Stephen and Michael for a great presentation today and illustrating the technologies and just the vision that the City of Durham has in their attempt to get their hands around project controls and keeping the citizens of the City of Durham and the County of Durham informed on how their tax dollars are being spent. This is really great stuff, and CDP really likes working with clients and customers that take the technology to the next level and use it in a proactive fashion. So again, if you have any questions, please type those into the dashboard, and Brett will read those and we'll get you some answers. So we'll do a couple more minutes here, see if we have any questions come up. And if not, we will conclude the webinar here shortly.
Paul, I would just like to say also, anybody that would like to email either me or Stephen, is that okay? Should feel free to do so.
Yes, absolutely.
And I would also like to thank everyone for their time and for attending this webinar.
Just on the Google Maps, since you were showing that, do you have kind of a time frame on when that is going to be coming available, Stephen?
So one of the things that we're working through is what's the right level of detail to provide. There's obviously a good level of very specific detail available in P6, and so the tool works well, and we're confident that we can put it out really as soon as we have sort of thought through the different constituencies and what's the correct level of detail to present to those folks.
We do have a question here, and the question is, what were the challenges selling this to the city?
Mike, you want to handle that?
Well, I think there's a couple different sales. Paul had his set of challenges selling it to the city, but inside the city there actually has not been too much of a challenge. It's the deployment that you've seen is within the Department of Public Works, and it's pretty much underneath the projects for which the Department of Public Works, and more specifically me, and my peers are responsible. So within my peer group, we see the need and went ahead with the deployment. So the city holistically is not taking this on, and we haven't had to do sell it, but we've kept the entire city informed about our plans. Very early on, Paul came to Durham. We put in on a series of fact-finding meetings And through those, we invited all the departments of the city in a transparent process. We described what the goals were in the committees, and we laid that out in a logical manner. And based upon that, it was there wasn't resistance. In fact, there's just been a tremendous amount of support from within the city for this deployment.
And I'll add to Mike's comments there that I think one of the strategies that was used at once there was a definite interest in Primavera and how the technology could help the city was, instead of this becoming a big enterprise selection, it was decided that the effort should be funded based on work that's going to come and be capitalized within the city of Durham. So this effort, as you saw Mike showed, has spanned 4 or 5 years, has been funded by projects and bonds that have brought the deliverables to the citizens, and as part of that, the technology has grown as the deliverables have been provided to the taxpayers. So it's been a good win-win for everybody, I think, in that situation. All right, any other questions there, Brett?
No other questions.
Okay. Well, I think what we'll do is we'll wrap it up for the day. You have everybody's phone numbers, email addresses. You have the CDP website and the City of Durham website, as well as Stevens to access. So if anybody has any additional questions, please let us know. CDP staff will touch base with you in a week or two, just as a courtesy to see if you have questions. Otherwise, we look forward to continuing our relationship with everybody, and have a great 4th of July. Take care.